There's a room inside you that you have never entered. You walk past its door 1,000 times a day. You feel its presence when you go quiet before sleep. You feel it in the half second before you speak a word you cannot take back, and yet you have never opened that door. Tonight we are going to open it. What you are about to hear is not a story, it is not a lecture, it is something closer to a warning and an invitation at the same time, because somewhere inside your skull right now, something is watching you read these words, something that is not the words themselves, something that has been with you since before you could speak and has never once introduced itself. Stay with me for the next 50 minutes, because by the end you will never look at your own mind the same way again. Part 1. The passenger. You have felt it before you sit down to work, and 5 seconds later you are somewhere else. Entirely a memory from years ago rises out of now weary. A conversation that never happened begins playing in your head like a film. A fear about tomorrow grabs you by the collar and will not let go. You did not choose any of this, it simply happened. And here is the strange part: you were not driving, something else was steering while you sat in the passenger seat, believing you were behind the wheel. Ask yourself something you have probably never asked before. If you are the one thinking, then who exactly is noticing that you are thinking? Whoa. Is the one standing quietly behind every thought, watching it rise and fall like a wave? This is not a riddle invented to sound clever. It is one of the oldest questions a human being has ever asked itself. In stone temples asked it, physicists staring into equations asked it, prisoners in solitary confinement asked it, because it was the only freedom left to the man. Tonight you are going to ask it to. Part 2. The ocean beneath the storm. Picture the surface of the ocean during a violent storm. Waves crash into each other, foam scatters in every direction, wind screams. If you were a fish living only at the surface, you would believe the entire ocean is chaos. You would believe there is no peace anywhere in the water, because all you have ever known is turbulence. But dive down even 30 feet and something strange happens. Water grows still. Roar above fades into a distant hum. The storm is still raging on the surface, yet the depths remain untouched. Your mind works the same wave. Surface is loud. Surface is where anxiety lives, where every worry screams for your attention, where old wounds resurface without warning. But beneath that noise is something that has never once been disturbed. Something still, something aware, something that has been quietly watching every storm you have ever lived through, without ever becoming the storm itself. Most people spend their entire lives at the surface, fighting waves, drowning in foam, never once realizing that stillness was only 30 feet beneath them the whole time. Part 3. The trap you did not know you were in. There is a term used quietly in psychology circles for what happens when a person becomes completely fused with their own thinking. It is called cognitive fusion. It means you no longer see a thought as a thought, you see it as truth itself. Your mind whispers, "You are not good enough," and instead of noticing it as one flickering signal among thousands, you absorb it as fact. Your mind whispers, "They are judging you," and suddenly your shoulders tighten, your voice shrinks, your whole body rearranges itself around a sentence that was never proven. Here is what almost nobody tells you: a thought has no power of its own. A thought is closer to weather than to law. It passes through the sky of your awareness, and then it is gone. Unless you reach up and hold on to it the moment you grab it and say, "This is who I am." This is my reality. You have fused with it. You have stepped out of the observer's seat and climbed inside the thought itself, and from inside a thought. You cannot see it clearly, the same way you cannot see the shape of a house while standing inside one of its walls. Part 4. The ancient alarm that never got the Mimir brain is extraordinary. But it was never actually built to make you happy. It was built for something older and colder, survivals of thousands of years ago, on open plains and inside dark caves. The mind that survived was the mind obsessed with danger. A shadow in the grass might be a predator. A strange smell on the wind might mean poison. Humans who paid the most anxious attention to these signals lived long enough to pass on their genest calm, relaxed. Carefree ones were often the ones who did not make it, so evolution rewarded fear. It rewarded vigilance. It rewarded a mind that never fully rested. No fast forward across thousands of generations to this exact moment. Predators are Gnethi caves have become bedrooms. Open plains have become notification screens, but the ancient alarm system is still fully installed, running in the background, scanning for danger 24 hours a day. And now it mistakes an unread message for a threat. It mistakes a difficult conversation for a physical attack. It mistakes public speaking for standing in front of a predator with nowhere to run. Here, racing hard before a meeting is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is proof that a survival system built for a world that no longer exists is doing exactly what it was designed to. Understanding this single fact quietly dissolves years of shamir. Mind is not broken. It is simply outdated software running on ancient code. And you are one of the first generations in history with the tools to finally rewrite it. Part 5. The invisible architect. There is something almost nobody stops to consider. Your brain is physically reshaping itself right now. While you listen to this sentence, this is not poetic language asterisk. It is a measurable biological fact known as neuroplasticity. Thought you repeat carves a slightly deeper groove into the neural pathways of your brain, the same way water carves a canyon into stone over time, one drop at a time, invisible in the moment, undeniable after years. If you repeat the thought, "I always fail," that groove deepens. It becomes the path of least resistance. Your mind will default to it automatically, the same way a river always finds its way back to the same channel. But here is the quiet miracle hidden inside this fact. Opposite is equally true. Every single time you notice a destructive thought, instead of obeying it, you carve a new path. Every time you choose one slow breath instead of panic, you strengthen a different circuit. Every time you return your attention to what matters instead of chasing distraction, you are physically, chemically, structurally rewriting the architecture of your own mind. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You are the architect of the brain you are building. Part 6. The experiment. Nobody warns you about try something with me right now for the next few seconds. Do not think about a locked door at the end of a long hallway. Do not picture the wood grain. Do not imagine the small brass hand lay. Do not wonder what might be waiting on the other side. Ed, you see it anyway. Of course you did. This is not a flaw in your willpower. It is simply how the mind processes instructions in order to understand what not to think about. Your brain first has to construct the image, and by the time it tries to delete it, the image is already there. Fully format. This explains something that quietly ruins countless lives. When you tell yourself, "Do not be anxious," your mind manufactures a vivid picture of anxiety in order to know what to avoid. When you tell yourself, Do not think about them. Their face appears instantly. Sharper than before fighting, a thought directly is like trying to push a beach ball beneath the surface of a swimming pool. Harder you push down, the more violently it launches back up. The moment you let go, suppression does not weaken a thought, it feeds it, strengthens it, and guarantees its return. Mind that finally finds peace is not the mind that wins the war against its thoughts. It is the mind that stops fighting altogether and simply learns to watch. Part 7. The difference between the strong and the free person you have ever admired has been a fretty fighter stepping into the ring is a fretty founder pitching an idea nobody believes in yet is a fretty performer walking on stage in front of thousands of strangers is a Fred Fair was never optional, and it was never the deciding factor. What separated them from everyone else who quietly gave up was never the absence of fear. It was a single decision made in a moment nobody else witnessed. The decision to notice a frightening thought and then choose not to obey it is the entire secret hiding inside every story of courage ever told. Not fearlessness of being seen or the refusal of it. Part 8. The magnifying glass. Hold a magnifying glass loosely and let sunlight scatter across your palm. You will feel warmth. Nothing more. No, hold that same glass perfectly still and focus every ray of light onto a single point. Within moments, smoke begins to rise. Nothing about the sunlight changed. Instantly, the focus changed. Your attention behaves in exactly the same way, scattered across 100 half-finished thoughts, 100 tabs, 100 worries. It produces nothing but warmth and fatigue, but focused deliberately onto one target, held steady without flinching. Your attention becomes powerful enough to start a fire that changes the direction of your entire life. This is why the question, "Where is your attention going?" might be the most important question you ever ask yourself. Energy always follows attention wherever you place your focus. That is the part of your life that grows. Part 9. The quiet war for your minthir. Our entire industry is built around a single goal: keeping your attention trapped and scattered. Every notification is engineered to interrupt you. Every auto-playing video is engineered to extend your scroll by another few minutes. Every outrage-filled headline is engineered to trigger the same ancient alarm system we spoke about earlier. The one designed to detect danger, now hijacked to detect controversy instead. This is not an accusation against any single company or person. It is simply the honest architecture of the modern world. Whoever controls your attention quietly begins to influence your decisions, your mood, your self-image, and eventually the entire direction of your life. Often, without you ever noticing the transfer of power taking place. So, here is a question worth sitting with in complete silence over the last week. Who has actually been steering your own deepest goals, or a stream of content designed by strangers who have never met you and never will? Your own values, or the passing opinions of people you will forget within a year? This is not meant to create guilt. Guilt is just another storm on the surface of the ocean. This is meant to create awareness, and awareness, quietly, without any dramatic announcement, is always the first step toward taking the wheel back. Part 10. The Forgotten Keepers. Long before psychology had a name, long before laboratories or brain scans existed, there were people scattered across the ancient world who had already discovered everything we have spoken about tonight. In the mountains of Asia, monks sat motionless for hours, not to escape the world, but to finally see it clearly. without the fog of constant thought clouding every observation in the deserts of the Middle East. Wandering hermits withdrew from noise entirely, not out of fear of people, but out of a hunger to meet the silence beneath their own minds in ancient Greece and Rome. Philosophers built entire schools of thought around a single radical idea, that a person could not control the events of their life, but could completely control their response to those events, and that this response was the only freedom that ever truly moderate theisy traditions had no access to each other separated by oceans, mountains, centuries, and languages that shared not a single word, and yet, independently, again and again, they arrived at the exact same conclusion: mind, left untrained, will rule youth mind. Trained patiently, will serve Yuffie called it. Different names across different centuriesum called it. Detachmentsum called it presentsum, called it the witnessum. Simply called it waking up, but underneath every name was the identical discovery, quietly passed down through generations of teachers and students who had nothing in common, except one shared secret: you are not the voice in your head, you are the one who hears it. This knowledge was never lost, it was simply buried beneath centuries of noise, the same way a river gets buried under decades of fallen leaves, still flowing quietly beneath the surface, waiting for someone patient enough to dig down and find it again. Part 11. The shadow room theory is a room inside every mind that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. It holds every emotion that was never fully felt, every grief that was rushed past because there was no time to stop, every anger that was swallowed because expressing it felt too dangerous, every fear that was buried so deep it no longer even feels like fear. It simply feels like exhaustion or numbness, or an unexplained tightness in the chest that appears for no obvious reason. Psychologists sometimes call this the shadow, the collection of everything a person has pushed out of conscious awareness because it once felt too heavy to carry. Here is the strange part: what gets pushed away does not disappear, it waits. It shows up disguised in dreams, in sudden irritability over something small, in a wave of sadness that arrives without any clear cause, in the moments right before sleep when the mind finally stops running fast enough for the buried thing to surface. Most people spend enormous energy keeping that door closed, but the very act of observing your own thoughts, the practice we have been building throughout this entire journey, slowly makes that door easier to open, safely, gently, without being overwhelmed by what waits on the other side. Because once you understand that you are the observer and not the emotion itself, even the heaviest feelings become something you can finally look at directly, instead of something you must spend your whole life running from. The goal was never to eliminate the shadow. The goal was only ever to stop being afraid of the room. It lives in part 12. The unanswerable question here is a question that sounds simple and is actually one of the deepest. A person can escape if you removed every thought from your mind. One by one, who would be left to move the thought? I am my job, something remains through the thought. I am my past mistake, something remains smooth the thought. I am what people think of mesomeething still remains. Keep going, grave every belief, every memory, every label you have ever attached to yourself. What is left when the removing is finished? Silencet, not an empty silence. See a silence that is somehow aware of itself, a silence that has been quietly present through every version of you that has ever existed. The child, the teenager, the person you are at this exact moment. Listening to these words, that silence never changed your body, changed your opinions, changed your circumstances, changed 1,000 times over, but the quiet awareness underneath all of it has remained exactly the same since the very beginning. This is not mysticism for its own sake. It is simply the most practical fact you will ever learn about yourself. Because once you know with total certainty that you are the awareness and not the passing thought, no thought can ever fully own you again. Part 13. The loop. Most of what feels like your personality is actually a loop running on autopilot. A trigger appears, a familiar thought fires automatically, familiar emotion follows right behind it. A familiar behavior completes the pattern and the loop closes, reinforcing itself just a little more each time it runs. Simeon cuts you off in traffic. The thought fires, people are disrespectful. The emotion follows, anger. The behavior completes it, honking, shouting. A ruined 10-minute mean does not reply to a message quickly enough. The thought fires, they are upset with me. The emotion follows, anxiety. The behavior completes it. Checking your phone 40 times in an hormone of this was consciously chosen. It was simply the loop running exactly the way it has run 1,000 times before. Because a well-worn groove is always easier to fall into than a new path. Breaking a loop does not happen through force, it happens through the tiny gap we have been building this entire time. The pause between the trigger and the reaction. The space where the observer finally gets a chance to step in before the automatic pattern completes itself. A very single time you catch a loop in progress and choose a different response, even a slightly different one, you weaken that old groove and begin carving a new one. This is not fast. Nobody breaks a lifetime pattern in a single evening. But every repetition matters. And the mind that has been running the same loop for 20 years can absolutely learn a new one. Because the same neuroplasticity that built the old pattern is fully available to build a better one. Part 14. The door begins to open. So, how does a person actually learn to observe their mind instead of being dragged around by it? Through willpower alone. Willpower is a muscle, and muscles get tired. Real change comes through practice, repeated quietly, day after day, until new pathways become the natural default. Are the techniques used across centuries of contemplative tradition and confirmed more recently inside modern psychological research, brought together into one practical path. Technique 1. The naming practice. The instant you notice a thought pulling you under, silently name what is happening, not the content of the thought, but the category of it. If worry arises, simply notice. Worry is here if a memory surfaces. Notice. Memory is here if judgment appears. Notice. Judgment is here. This sounds almost too simple to matter. Yet something remarkable happens the moment you name a mental event instead of becoming. You create a small gap between yourself and the thought. And inside that gap lives your entire freedom. Research on this practice has shown that simply labeling an emotional experience reduces its intensity in the brain almost immediately, because the act of naming shifts activity away from the reactive, alarm-driven regions and toward the calmer, more reflective ones. Technique 2. The breath as an encore. Your breath is the only bodily process that runs automatically and yet can also be consciously controlled at will. This makes it the perfect anchor back into the present moment. Whenever your mind drifts into the past or races into the future, treat this slowly. Right now, wherever you are, a breath in gently through your nose for a count of 4. Hold that breath softly for a count of 4. Release it slowly through your mouth for a count of 6 repeat. This pattern 4 times. Notice how the noise in your mind begins to quiet. Not because the thoughts disappeared, but because your attention finally found something steady to rest upon. Technique 3. The observer question. Whenever a thought grips you tightly, ask yourself one single question. Spoken silently in your own mind. Will is aware of this thought though. Not search for a clever answer, simply ask the question and rest in the space that opens up right after asking it. Brief pause. That quiet gap before the mind rushes to answer is the closest most people will ever come to touching the observer directly. The silent awareness that has been present behind every single thought you have ever had. Unchanged since childhood, untouched by any storm that has ever passed through you. Technique 4. The 10-minute stillness. Set aside 10 minutes. Ideally at the same time each day. Sit somewhere quiet. Close your eyes and simply watch your thoughts arrive and depart. The same way you might watch clouds cross an open sky. Do not judge them, do not chase them, do not try to stop them. Your only task is to notice when you have been pulled into a thought, and gently, without frustration, return your attention to your breath. Some days this will feel impossible. Your mind will feel like a room full of shouting voices. That is completely normal. And it is not a sign of failure. Every single time you notice you have drifted and gently return, you are doing the actual exercise of noticing itself. Is the practice, not the silence. Over weeks, something begins to shift. Gap between a thought arising and you becoming lost inside it grows slightly wider. That widening gap is where your entire future freedom will eventually live. Technique 5. The evening reflection before sleep. Spend 2 quiet minutes reviewing your day, not to judge yourself, but simply to notice where did your attention go today, which thoughts controlled you, and which ones you were able to simply observe and release. This practice trains something psychologists call metacognition. The ability to think about your own thinking. It is one of the most powerful predictors of long-term emotional resilience, because a mind that can observe itself can eventually learn to guide itself. Technique 6. Choosing your input. Deliberate. Remember the magnifying glass. Remember that energy follows attention. If you spend hours each day consuming content engineered to provoke fear, comparison, or outrage, do not be surprised when your inner world begins to reflect exactly that. This does not mean disappearing from the world. It means becoming intentional about what you allow into the deepest layers of your mind. The same way a careful gardener is intentional about what seeds get planted in the soil. Technique 7. The mirror question. Whenever a painful thought about yourself arises, pause and ask silently, would I say this to someone I love? If a friend came to you and said, I failed one time so I must be worthless, you would immediately recognize the distortion. You would gently correct them. You would remind them that one failure is an event, not an identity. The mind rarely extends that same gentleness inward. Mirror question exists to interrupt that double standard. It does not deny the mistake. It does not pretend nothing happened. It simply restores fairness, treating yourself with the same reasonable compassion you would automatically offer to anyone else, standing in your exact position. Technique 8. The widening lens. Zoom out on purpose. Weight of a crisis feels enormous right now. Ask yourself gently, will this matter in 5 years? Will I even remember the exact words of this argument, this mistake, this embarrassing moment, a decade from now? For almost everything the mind treats as an emergency, the honest answer is nothing is not meant to dismiss real pain. Some things genuinely deserve their weight, And this practice is never about pretending suffering does not exist. It is about noticing how often the mind inflates a temporary discomfort into a permanent catastrophe, borrowing tomorrow's imagined disaster and forcing you to suffer through it today. Twice, once in imagination and once if it ever actually arrives. Part 15. The mountain and the weather. Imagine a single mountain that has stood in the same place for 10,000 years. Across those 10,000 years, every kind of weather imaginable has passed across its slopes. Blinding snowstorms, gentle spring rain, scorching summer heat, lightning splitting the sky in half, and through every single one of those storms, the mountain itself never moved. It did not become the storm. It simply allowed the weather to pass across its surface while remaining exactly what it has always been: solid, unmoved, patient. You are the mountain. Your emotions, your racing thoughts, your anxious mornings and heavy nights, these are the weather. They are real. They are worth acknowledging. A storm on a mountain is still a genuine storm. But a mountain never once mistook a passing storm for its own identity. It never said, "I am now a blizzard." Forever it simply waited. Because mountains understand something most people forget, that weather always passes, and what remains underneath it never actually left. Part 16. The cost of forgetting. What happens to a person who never learns any of this? They spend decades reacting instead of choosing. Every difficult email ruins an entire afternoon. Every awkward silence in a conversation gets replayed at 2 in the morning for weeks. Afterward, every passing comparison to someone else's life quietly chips away at their sense of worth, one small cut at a time, until eventually the cuts add up to something that feels unbearable. Even though no single cut ever seemed significant on its own, this is the quiet tragedy hiding underneath so many lives that look completely fine on the surface. In it, a dramatic collapse, but a slow erosion, 1,000 small surrenders to thoughts that were never actually true, each one small enough to ignore, all of them together large enough to define an entire lifetime. The person who never learns to observe their mind does not usually end up in some obvious crisis. They simply wake up one day, years later, and quietly wonder where all the time went, why they spent so much energy on things that turned out not to matter, why they let a voice in their head make every major decision without ever once questioning whether that voice deserved the authority it was given. This is exactly why what you are learning tonight matters. So much more than it might appear to on the surface. Sight is not a small trick for feeling slightly calmer during a stressful week. It is the difference between a life lived on autopilot and a life lived on purpose. Part 17. The voice that raised the other is a voice inside your head that speaks in a very particular tone. Whenever you make a mistake, pay close attention to it. Submit notice the exact words it chooses. Notice the exact rhythm of its criticism. For many people, if they listen closely enough, that voice sounds strangely familiar. It sounds like a parent who was impossible to please. It sounds like a teacher who once said something in passing that never actually left. It sounds like an old friend group whose approval always seemed to hang just out of reach. This is not a coincidence. Mind absorbs its earliest models of judgment long before it has any ability to question. A child cannot evaluate whether criticism is fair or unfair, accurate or distorted. They simply absorb it as truth. Because a child's entire survival depends on the approval of the adults around them, that absorbed voice does not disappear with age. It simply moves inward and begins speaking in first person. so quietly and so consistently that most adults never once stopped to ask, wait, whose voice is this actually? Here is the freeing part of this discovery if that inner critic was learned. It can also be unlearned. It was installed through repetition, and it can be replaced through repetition. Using the exact same neuroplasticity we spoke about earlier, do not have to fight that voice. You simply have to recognize it clearly enough to say, silently, that is not my voice, that is an old recording. And I am no longer required to obey a recording. Part 18. The test. Imagine, just for a moment, a completely ordinary Tuesday morning. Your phone buzzes, and the message on the screen makes your stomach tighten instantly. A decision was made without you. A plan changed without warning. Someone said something that stings in the old pattern. The loop fires immediately. The thought arrives, this is unfair. The emotion follows, anger or hurt. The reaction completes itself. A sharp reply typed out in 30 seconds and sent before the feeling even finishes. Rising no, imagine the exact same Tuesday morning, the exact same message, the exact same sting in your stomach, but this time, something different happens in the gap between the trigger and the reaction. You notice the tightness in your chest, and instead of becoming it, you silently name it. Hurt is Hario. Take one slow breath, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. You ask the observer question, quietly. Who is aware of this feeling in that small widened gap? Something remarkable happens. You still feel the sting. The feeling was never fake. But you are no longer required to let the feeling write your response for you. Choose your next sentence instead of reacting with one thing. About the outside world changed between these two versions of the same Tuesday morning. Message was identical. Sting was identical. Only thing that changed was the space between the trigger and the response. And inside that tiny space lived the entire difference between a life that happens to you and a life you actually direct. Part 19. The return. Somewhere in your childhood. Before language, before comparison, before the weight of expectation, there was a quiet awareness present behind your eyes. Simply watching the world unfold without a single word of judgment. That awareness never left. It has been sitting quietly behind every anxious thought you have ever had, behind every sleepless night, behind every moment you believed yourself to be broken. It was never broken. It was only ever buried beneath the noise. And now, having listened this far, you have already begun the process of digging it back out. The room inside you that we spoke about at the very beginning. The one you have walked past 1,000 times without entering is no longer completely closed. You have your hand on the door, but before you walk through it, there are 2 final things worth knowing. Things that turn everything you have heard tonight from an idea into something you can actually live. Part 20. The garden. Imagine 2 gardens, side by side, planted in identical soil. Under the exact same Tsunoni, garden is tended daylight. Gardener walks its rows each morning, pulling weeds the moment they appear, watering the seeds worth growing, noticing early which sprouts deserve space and which ones would eventually choke everything else if left underneath. Second garden is left completely untended. Nobody visits. Nothing is pulled. Nothing is watered on. Purpose whatever grows, simply because nothing stopped it after a single season. The difference between these 2 gardens is already visible after a decade. The untended garden is unrecognizable, overtaken entirely by whatever happened to take root first. Strong or weak, useful or harmful, it never mattered. Because nobody was choosing. Your mind is a garden. and it has been growing every single day of your life, whether you were tending it or not. Every thought you fed with attention was a seed watered. Every belief you repeated without question was a weed left alone to spread. You cannot stop seeds from landing in the soil. That part was never in your control. Thoughts will always arrive uninvited. Storms will always pass across the mountain, but you decide every single day which seeds get watered and which ones get pulled before they take root. This is not a one-time decision, it is a daily practice. Quiet and unglamorous, the same small choice made over and over, morning after morning, for years, until one day the garden itself has become something you barely recognize from where it started, full of exactly what you chose to grow on purpose, instead of whatever simply happened to land there. First part 21. Living it in a noisy world. All of this can sound simple in a quiet room, late at night, with nothing pulling at your attention. It feels far more difficult on a Monday morning with 3 deadlines, a crying child, a notification buzzing every few minutes, and a mind already exhausted before the day has properly begun. So here is the honest truth about integrating any of this into a genuinely busy, noisy, demanding life. You do not need an hour of silence every morning. You do not need to disappear to a mountain or a monastery. You do not need perfect conditions, because perfect conditions rarely exist for anyone. No matter how peaceful their life might appear from the outside, what you actually need is far smaller and far more achievable. 3 slow breaths before opening your phone in the morning. Goni honest naming of an emotion during a difficult meeting, silently, without anyone else ever knowing. 30 seconds of stillness in a parked car before walking into a stressful situation. These small moments, scattered throughout an ordinary, chaotic day, accumulate the exact same way large blocks of formal, practiced of mind does not care whether the gap between trigger and response happened during a 10-minute meditation or during 10 seconds in a grocery store line. It only cares that the gap happened at all, that the observer got a chance to show up instead of being skipped entirely over time. These small moments stop feeling like apathy, start feeling like identity. Stop being someone trying to practice mindfulness. You simply become someone who naturally notices before reacting. The same way someone who has driven for 20 years no longer thinks consciously about the clutch or the mirrors. The skill has simply become who they are. Part 22. The thing that was never missing here is the secret hiding underneath every technique, every metaphor, every ancient tradition we have spoken about across this entire journey. You were never trying to become the observer. You already are the observer. You were never trying to reach some distant, enlightened version of yourself who finally has quiet control over every thought. That quiet, watching presence has been here the entire time, underneath every version of you that has ever existed, unchanged since before you could speak, untouched by every storm you have ever lived through. Work was never about building something new, it was only ever about remembering something that got buried. Think back to the very first minutes of tonight. The question we began with: if you are the one thinking, then who is watching those thoughts? You now know the answer, not as a clever piece of trivia, but as something you can actually feel right now, in this exact moment, as you notice yourself listening to these final words. That noticing, that quiet awareness sitting behind your own attention, has never once been disturbed by a single thought you have ever had. It was there during your best moment. It was there during your worst it will be there tomorrow morning, the instant you open your eyes. Before a single thought has even had the chance to revivisce is the strange and quiet paradox at the center of everything you spent your whole life searching for control over your mind, and the entire time, the part of you capable of that exact control was never lost. It was only ever waiting patiently for you to stop searching everywhere else and finally turn around and notice what had been standing quietly behind you the whole time. Part 23. What happens next? Nothing outside you needs to change for your entire life to shift, not your job, not your circumstances, not the people around you. Only real revolution that has ever mattered in human history has always been an internal one, quiet, invisible, unfolding behind someone's calm expression while the world outside continues exactly as it was. You now understand something most people will move through their entire lives without ever discovering. You are not the storm on the surface of the ocean, you are the stillness underneath it, watching, patient, untouched, waiting only for you to remember you were there all along. Practice what you heard tonight, naming the breath, the question, the stillness mirror question, the widening lens, the 10-minute stillness, the evening reflection. Not perfectly, not every single day, but consistently. The way water consistently, patiently carves stone. There will be mornings when the old loops fire exactly as they always have. When the alarm system mistakes an ordinary Tuesday for a genuine emergency. When the beach ball gets pushed underwater out of pure habit before you even notice what happened. That is not failure, it is simply the old groove, still worn smooth from years of use. Still the path of least resistance. Notice it, name it, and gently return. The same way you would gently guide a wandering mind back to the breath during 10 minutes of quiet stillness. That returning, repeated patiently over weeks and months, is the entire practice. There is no final destination where the mind becomes perfectly silent. Forever, even the monks in the mountains, even the philosophers in ancient Rome, even the most disciplined minds in human history still experienced thoughts, still felt fear, still faced mornings where the old patterns tried to take the wheel. Against difference was never the absence of thought. Difference was always the presence of the observer, quietly awake behind it, no longer fooled, no longer dragged under, and slowly, without announcement, without applause, without anyone else even noticing the shift taking place inside you, you will notice something has changed. You will catch a thought before it catches you. You will pause before a reaction that once controlled you. Completely, you will feel, for the first time in years, like the one actually holding the wheel. Storm will still come, the weather will still pass across the mountain, but you will remember each time a little faster than the time before that you were never the storm to begin with. You were always the stillness underneath it. Door is open, no walk through it.